Look, the truth behind Oreos, it's processed, it's shit. You know that, everybody knows that. You like to eat them, so what really is inside them? In this video, we're gonna uncover the truth about why these are so bad for you, why they're pure evil, basically. And I'm not talking about demonic symbols that you find all over these cookies. There's like 1,000 other videos to do with that bullshit. I'm not gonna go into that. I'm gonna go into some facts that are written on the packet itself, the ingredients list. But before we get to that, we're gonna have a quick look at what Oreos are and where they came from. So Oreo is a chocolate flavored biscuit with some cream in the middle. Everybody knows that. There's like a whole bunch of fakes. None of them are gonna live up to the real one. If you're an Oreo connoisseur, I mean, that's not really, it's almost an oxymoron to say that, but anyway, if you like these, you like these. Oreos actually started over 100 years ago. They were started by the National Biscuit Company, which is National Biscuit Bis and Company Co. National Biscuit Company, Nabisco. Nabisco started Oreos. Nabisco was a form of two separate companies owned by brothers, a merger of two cookies. One is the Sunshine Biscuit and the other one is the Hydrox, which sounds pretty weird. That's like a chemical sounding name, but that's really a good base for where Oreos actually ended up. So Hydrox actually came back out recently. Some people prefer them. I think the only extra they say about themselves is they use like real sugar, but the Oreos have like partially real sugar, so it doesn't really make much of a difference, plus it's all crap. But despite that, people still like Oreos. Oreo has continued to thrive. They've come out with many different types, originals, lots of different flavors. There's heaps of different types of Oreos. They're all made of the same basic stuff because they have the same basic cookie with the same basic cream. Ingredients are all similar, but I'm gonna look at what actually is inside the basic original Oreo to really get to the bottom of why this is so bad for you. On the back of this packet, we're gonna find 12 ingredients. They are wheat flour, sugar, vegetable oil, cocoa powder, fructose syrup, cornstarch, iodized salt, raising agent 500, raising agent 503, soy emulsifier, flavor, and antioxidant 319. So on the surface, if you don't know what those mean, those don't mean anything. You're only gonna look at key elements, which is wheat flour, sugar, oil, and you think those are good. If you think oil is good, go and watch the previous video. It's all about canola oil. That's the major seed oil used in the industry. In effect, it was kind of the original seed oil. And we're gonna get right started with the first ingredient, wheat flour. If you don't know how ingredients are listed, it's always biggest to smallest. That's how it is everywhere in the world, which means it's gonna be majority, the first ingredient, wheat flour. Wheat flour, what's the problem with that? It's just flour made of wheat. Now, wheat flour comes in two types really, bleached and standard. So standard is gonna be a brown sort of color because it's got the outside husk of the wheat and some other stuff mixed into it. Other stuff as in, stuff that comes from the plant. It's got more of that stuff mixed into it, so it produces a brown color. But the problem with having a brown colored wheat flour is brown colored everything. In Oreo's case, there isn't information out there as to whether they use the white flour or the brown flour, but almost everything is used with white flour because they need to get very specific mixes to do their specific colors. If they were to use the brown flour, it wouldn't matter too much because their biscuit is dark, but some of their biscuits, if you've seen some of the flavors, aren't dark. So those ones at the very minimum would have to use the white colored flour, but it's not a fact, so we can't hold them to it unless they say themselves which flour they use. If they were to use bleached flour, however, this is what bleached flour actually has in it. So when I say bleached, we're talking about white flour here. So to make flour white, obviously besides taking out the most nutritious parts of the grain, there's still extra elements involved. If you've ever had cheap white flour, you'll know what I'm talking about when it has an acidic burn to it. That burn is caused by two chemicals mixed into the flour to essentially whiten it. Now the first element is benzoyl peroxide. If you're someone who uses certain types of creams to remove certain blemishes from your face, we're talking about acne, you'll actually have seen that ingredient in acne removers, benzoyl peroxide. I mean, do you want to eat that? I don't think so, but you put it on your skin, so it's the same thing, honestly. So, if you're not having negative side effects to that, is it that bad for you, or is it because you don't know the long-term effects of that? Realistically, as far as they've got so far, it can sometimes cause slight burning for people, but there's not enough pull in that direction to really make a bold claim about that. So We'll look at the other chemical that's used to make white flour. So the other chemical is potassium bromate. So potassium bromate is a known carcinogen, so it causes cancer. I mean, this thing's been shown to cause tumors in rats. You're not a rat, so it doesn't matter, maybe, but realistically, do you want to eat something that does do something like that? Are you gonna continue to eat it and wait till it happens, or, you know, not eat that sort of stuff? Even though we can't say if Oreos use bleached, unbleached flour without them saying it, you can assume even if it was, it has to be a certain mix to create certain mixes, essentially to create the biscuits exactly perfectly every single time. So you can tell for a fact they're gonna have the most sterile version of every single ingredient, which would mean bleached processed flour. That's just the wheat flour. We haven't even gotten to the next ingredient. The next ingredient is sugar. Sugar has so many different ways that it could be processed. We're going to assume they're going to be using some nice natural white sugar. Sugar, of course, is brown as well. So to make sugar white, they mix in bone char. Bone char is exactly what you think it is, charred animal bones. That releases carbon, turns the sugar white. If, you know, you want to eat that, it's up to you, but there is a type of person who would be concerned about bone char, even though it's not really much of an issue. It's vegans. So people eat Oreos assuming it's vegan. They call it an accidentally vegan product, but nothing's accidentally done in something. There's going to be something else added to it. So if you are vegan and you're eating processed sugars have bone in them. So that's just some facts for you if you care about that sort of stuff. But we're not going to focus too much on the sugars. On to the next one, vegetable oil. Now, for a more in-depth breakdown on vegetable oils, particularly canola oil, which is what this probably has in it, go and check out my previous video that talks all about canola oil. But to give you a brief look at what this particular oil likely is, there's a very strong chance that it would be partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. It doesn't say it on it, but it's a good chance it would be. Now, firstly, vegetable oil means it could be any oil or any mixture of oil with no standard set on what the oil actually is. There's a lot of information about partially hydrogenated oils, otherwise known as trans fats. These things are known to cause things like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer. So, you know, it's just taking vegetable oil from the crap that it is to a whole new level. But check out the previous video for more on that. Next, we're going to look at cocoa powder. Now, cocoa powder is going to be in the same category as processed flour. There's not a lot of information about it, a little bit here and there. You don't know what kind of cocoa powder they're using that, but again, assume it's high processed, bad quality. But we don't have a lot of information available on that, so I'm going to go to the next ingredient, fructose syrup, or high fructose corn syrup. You know, everyone knows it by different sort of names. Fructose syrup, just your classic. I mean, there's a whole lot of other processes to it, but the overall thing is it increases appetite, makes you addicted to stuff like this. That's really the element that makes this the most addictive, the corn syrup that's inside this. Now, the next ingredient is cornstarch. Cornstarch isn't something you'd expect to be bad. I mean, well, I guess you kind of could because, you know, it's like corn, you know, flour from corn and stuff. It might not be the worst, but it's a process to make it because it needs to have that sort of acidic hit to it for it to work properly. So cornstarch is made, well, processed using something called sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid is just a weak version of sulfuric acid. If you want to look at what sulfuric acid does to people, then don't look that up because it's not going to be good. But yeah, pour some sulfuric acid in your skin and see what happens. It's going to burn right through you. Sulfuric acid is just a very weak version of that, not something you want to be eating. But, I mean, not as bad as some of the other stuff in this, but it is still really bad. There's a bit of salt mixed into the thing, iodized salt. Iodized salt, I mean, that's not really bad for you. You need to have that sort of stuff in your diet. Again, highly processed. You don't know if the iodine is man-made or natural. So, you know, take that what you will. I'll leave that one up to you. Now we're on to the next two. They're grouped together in this. Raising agents, raising agent 500 and 503. Raising agent 500, baking soda. That's, you know, it is what it is. There's not going to be some good stuff in it. There's not going to be some bad stuff in it. Take that what you will. Raising agent 500 is just baking soda. So let's look at raising agent 503. Raising agent 503 is ammonium bicarbonate. So that already doesn't sound like it's the best thing, but breathing in ammonium bicarbonate, obviously larger quantities than you're going to get in this, will cause throat and lung infections, wheezing, shortness of breath. It's essentially going to cause lung disease in the long term, but that's more of a problem for the people who are working with it directly. You're consuming small amounts, but again, is that something you really want to be eating? Obviously, it's not going to be. You don't need to be eating stuff that is just poison. It's not even food. This is barely made of food besides a bit of wheat flour, which you don't even know what that's got mixed into it. That's why if something is accidentally vegan, like I mentioned before, it probably means it's so processed, it's got literally nothing in it that's food of any sort. That's why the most unhealthy diet you can follow is a processed vegan diet. That's like so bad, it's actually just stupid. But let's not go into that. That can be for a different video. Let's look at the next ingredient. The next ingredient is your classic soy emulsifier. So that part of soy that they use for the emulsifier is what I explained in the canola oil video, previous video, when I say they take the husks of the seed and blend that to a paste. That paste is the emulsifier. If you don't have a problem with that, then you don't have a problem with that. But it still has been through one chemical process before it reaches that stage. So second last ingredient is flavor. Now I actually did a full breakdown of flavors in an older video I did, which I'll put in the description. It's one I did on a processed iced coffee you could buy from the shops. And I give a bit of information about what flavors are versus natural flavors. Check the link to watch the rest of that. But to give you a quick rundown, flavors can be literally anything, like literally anything. Especially natural flavors comes guaranteed from a vegetable source or an animal source, but if it just says flavor, it's anything. And they're not supposed to even tell you what's in that because that's like their secret recipe. So really, it's not good. The very last ingredient is antioxidant 319. That doesn't sound that bad. Antioxidant 319. Antioxidant 319 is also known as TBHQ. How to pronounce that? Terbutylhydroquinone, I guess. Anyway, if you can pronounce that, let me know. This one, if you're in certain countries, they do write TBHQ. If you're in other countries, then they hide it behind other numbers, antioxidant 319. This one is either banned or put into small substances in most countries around the world. I think America was supposed to ban it, but it ended up coming through. So if you look at the American Food and Drug Association, the FDA, they say TBHQ is known in high doses to cause tumors in rats. So they recommend it not be put in foods in high doses, but only to put in minute doses. And they also recommend that people only have small amounts of that. If they're literally just straight out saying that, then that's quite crap, to be honest. And you really don't want to be having stuff like that. But you know, people are going to eat what they're going to eat, but that is everything that's in an Oreo. Now the question at the end of all this is, are you actually going to stop eating Oreos? Or are you going to be going straight to the shops after I showed you some flavors that you haven't seen before? Mint, Neapolitan, and choc berry top. That's why they have these nice colors and nice flavors. Everybody's going to skip everything I just said and go straight to buying these. So if anything, even though I've told you what crap is inside Oreos and brought that company down, I've actually brought that company back up by showing you flavors that you didn't know about and you want to go buy now. But that's pretty much how all this stuff works. Like I said, if you care about health, then this is information that you use to progress your health. And if you don't, it's just some interesting facts that honestly don't really mean anything to you at the end of the day. If you don't really care about your health, then who gives a shit about all this stuff? You know, do whatever you want. That's pretty much how it's going to be. Only moderation would come into, you don't want to only eat just Oreos for your whole day straight, or you'll probably be sick and diseased in like 2 years. But again, your choice. That's the end of this video. One quick fact I'll throw in. This actually took some finding because nobody's got the proper information about it. But one place I found has shown what the origin of the name Oreo is. And it's actually named after a flour that was on the original Hydrox biscuit. The Hydrox biscuit has flowers all around it. And the flour is from a plant called the Oreo Daphne flower. So that's where they got the name from, because their biscuits back then were named after flowers. So that's where they got Oreo from. And regarding what I said at the start about these weird symbolism you can see on the biscuit here, that's for somebody else to talk about. I'll just talk about what's actually in the food. If you want to see something else, subscribe for more food. I'll see you next time. One of them had one cookie. One of them had another cookie. The other what the fuck was the other cookie called?